And we're live with another episode of Englewood Camera Shop Talk after a brief hiatus that we had for a couple days, but we were pretty busy. So we're here with Jessica, who is a storm chaser and a fantastic weather photographer. So both me and Kyle are very excited to talk about this because we talk about this all the time, yet neither of us seem to actually go out and do it.
Yeah, and this is the cloud over the camera shop or Coors Field. That's about my extent of taking crazy photos.
Nothing wrong with that.
For the most part, yep.
Mitch, you stole my thunder because I wanted to come in and be like, hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there, and I wanted to show off. I don't want to wake him up now because he just went to sleep. But I have 2 kittens now, and at some point today, they'll make an appearance on the show.
Surprise guest appearance.
Surprise guest appearance from Pills and Porter.
Pills and Porter.
Yeah, they're beer names, Colorado.
I like the names. I think those are fantastic names.
They stole the hearts of every veterinarian at the clinic today when they went for their checkup. Everyone was like, you're lucky we're giving it back to you. So, do I have the cutest cats on the planet? Maybe.
Love it.
But anyways,
Jessica,
yeah, that's right. We have to knock out the first part of the show where we mentioned nothing photography related.
I think we did that.
Yeah, but we need to see your kittens.
Yeah. Why don't you show us your kittens right now? I want to see it now.
Okay. You want to see it? Okay. Oh, it's sleeping, Mitch. Well, this is one sleeping in its thing, but here is Porter. And Porter weighs about 1.8 pounds, and he's got a little cold right now, so he's on medicine. So I got a surge in his mouth twice a day. He doesn't like that, but
oh my gosh.
Aw, that's a little heart.
And then and Pills is the bigger one. So Porter was like the little runt of the litter, and so, but he's a person cat. He'll just come up to me, scratch my leg, and expect me to pick him up. So
he says, give me all the cups.
Yeah. And then Porter, they're very photogenic. I've been taking their photos for like 5 days now. So
excuse me for one moment. I have to supply a Wi-Fi password.
More kittens.
We'll just be distracted by Porter here. This is Porter.
Oh.
He was born in Kansas, where there's probably a lot of storms in Kansas.
There's some right now, actually.
Yeah. So look at him. He is the star of the broadcast. What I was thinking of, like, making just a webcam and putting Porter and Pills on it, and just like people could stream from our living room and just watch them.
I feel like it's fascinated by the stream right now.
Yeah, it was like, yeah. All right. Oh no, don't just walk around and go to sleep. So how long? So Jessica, you've been chasing storms for like about 8 years. You told me earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into chasing storms? Like, what made you just want to go and look for tornadoes?
Oh, well, I've always loved the weather. I've always been, growing up in Colorado, I've always been fascinated with the extreme weather phenomena that we see here in Colorado. Everything from hail, blizzards, flooding, fires, tornadoes. I mean, we really see it all here, and I've always just loved all of it. But I'm sure, of course, you've seen Twister, but that was one of my favorite childhood movies, as it was, I'm sure, many chasers these days. But that just kind of opened my eyes to the world of chasing. Like, people actually do this. They actually go out and chase tornadoes. I want to do that. How can I go do that? Right. And it really took kind of a lot of years of my own study of weather and meteorology before I realized, okay, well, I want to actually study this professionally. So that's when I went to school for it.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so where'd you go to school for? Are you still going to school for it?
I'm actually in school right now.
Right.
I graduate in December from Mississippi State University. I'm in their operational meteorology undergrad program. So
cool.
Pretty rad. I got to get this question out of the way before we go into like gear and technique and stuff like that, because that's all going to be pretty interesting too. But I got to know what your storm chasing vehicle is.
My vehicle. Well, I actually chase in a 2014 Subaru Outback. I chose it because it's great on gas mileage, and I don't really feel too guilty about beating it up, really.
Right.
In fact, within a week of buying it in 2017, I actually took it out chasing, and I saw several tornadoes in Wyoming and Nebraska, and ended up in some pretty good sized hail and got my first hail dents. So within a week of buying this practically brand new car, I had hail dents. So it's like, I had to break it in.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, though. Getting a vehicle that you're not afraid to beat up is probably like the number one criteria for storm chasing, huh?
Yeah, that is. Some people like build hail shields and other types of things just to protect their vehicles. I don't really care.
We saw some beast of a truck come to the camera shop. I think it was last year during storm season. It had it looked like it could have been out of Mad Max.
There's quite a few vehicles out there. People go crazy with it. I mean, they'll go all out with their vehicles, and it's pretty funny to see what some people do.
Right.
I put a lightning rod on mine. Attract it.
There you go.
Bring everything closer.
Bring me the lightning.
Electronics in the vehicle. Yeah, that's good stuff.
And then,
so go ahead.
What everybody loves to talk about the gear, so I guess we'll get that out of the way too. What lens setup, camera setup are you rocking with nowadays?
Sure. So I shoot with a Nikon D810. That is my baby.
That's definitely a hail-proof camera.
Yeah. Oh, but if you could see my camera, it has been through it. So it's not pretty to look at, but it's still rugged. It still holds up to the test. I shoot with typically I shoot almost exclusively wide-angle shots of storms. Just generally because I want to see the whole structure of the storm. So if I'm looking at a supercell, I don't want to just see the very bottom of it, right? So I want to see the whole structure. So I shoot with a Rokinon 14mm f2.8. And then sometimes I'll go out and rent, like if I want slightly higher quality glass, more higher quality glass, I'll go and rent the Nikon 14-24 f2.8.
Right on.
But really the quality is actually, for the price of that Rokinon, it actually holds up pretty well. Yeah,
that's what really turned me on to this whole style of photography was people who were able to get the entire cell, because it's just like, it's something you don't, for a lot of people, they don't really see that. If they live in the suburbs or something like that, there's never usually a wide enough expanse of space for them to see the top, bottom, left, and right of the clouds. And you definitely need a lens that wide, because when me and my girlfriend were just driving back from Illinois, and there was probably wasn't that big, but there was a big cell south when we were coming through the plains in Colorado. And I was like just shooting while driving out the window with a 35 though. And the 35 could not come close to getting everything. So it was like, I wish I had a 14. I wish I had a 16 or something like that to get that. So
you really do need that super wide advantage.
And pulling shadows and highlights on an A10 is pretty easy. So how much goes into? Can we put a couple? I'm gonna put your photos up. Oh wait, people can see what we're talking about. Oh yeah.
Say hi to a couple people in the comments. We got Cameron saying hi. Hello, Cameron, and thank you for saying Kyle's kittens are cute. They are very cute.
Yeah, I just needed the reinforcement. Oh my gosh.
My mom says, congrats, Kyle, on being a cat dad. And Wheezy G says, hi, guys. I'm from Longmont, Colorado to Oklahoma City.
There we go.
Tons of weather there.
That's a good storm, alley there.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
So, yeah, tell us about this one. Sorry, I told you I was going to be distracted.
Yes, I will gladly tell you about this. Okay, so I shot this on May 21st of 2016. This was taken near Leoti, Kansas. And it was just, I'm so glad that you led off with this photo because it's actually the anniversary of that storm today. So,
oh wow,
right.
So anyway, so this particular storm was a photographer's dream to photograph. I mean, obviously, just from looking at it, you have a storm that essentially stayed in one general spot for like 3 solid hours, and it just sat there. And the longer that it sat there spinning, the more sculpted it became because of the changing, the strong winds changing direction, with height causes that sculpted supercell look with those kind of stacked plates. The striations that you see up there is kind of looks like, like little layers. And I love that there's just this random vehicle driving straight into it.
Yeah, it's like
You
YOLO.
just like, I don't even care. I'm just going to drive into the storm real quick. So I thought that was the perfect opportunity. What was a unique challenge about this, though, was we had really strong inflow winds. These are the winds obviously flowing into the storm. And you really couldn't even stand in one place without some kind of support. So I was literally, while shooting this, leaning against my car and bracing myself against the car while the wind is blowing like dirt and mud and all kinds of stuff all over me. And I'm just like getting caked in dirt and mud. And I'm just like, oh, well, I'm shooting.
Yeah.
So did anybody else, were you surrounded by any other photographers when this was going on?
There were quite a few chasers, but it didn't really ever feel like we were just right on top of each other. I mean, we were pretty spread out because you had all the time in the world to kind of just pick a good spot and stay there and shoot it. So
I thought that was interesting when you said it sat there for like 3 hours and gave itself that shape, because I guess if you didn't know that it could sit there for a while or something, or maybe you didn't know it was going to change shape and you were beginning and you showed up, got one picture of it at its current state and then left to try and get a different angle, you might not have gotten this awesome sort of butte shape that this is. It almost looks like a hood ornament on a car. It's pretty, I love the shape of it. It's so cool.
Well, and really, generally with chasing, most people do try to get closer to get, kind of underneath the storm to see, if there's a tornado that spins up, you kind of want to be, us crazy storm chasers like to be close, so we like to see. And it did actually produce a couple tornadoes, but they were little weak ones. They weren't anything to write home about. But if you were underneath that storm and not further back, you would have not ever seen this structure, the supercell structure here, which would have been, in my opinion, just a huge loss, because I mean, you don't really see something like that every day or even in a lifetime. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that does look like a pretty rare formation.
It looks like pancakes just kind of on top of each other.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I love the color tint that you added to it too, because does really give off that sort of greenish feeling that you get when you're surrounded by one of these storms. You get that kind of energy that you feel. I'm like addicted to that when it's like the hairs stand up on your neck and everything. You feel like this ominous thing is above you, and it's just that is a really nice picture. I like that a lot.
It's really hard to describe the feeling of just sitting there and staring at something like this. It's your hair absolutely stands up, and it's like all the blood is just pumping through your veins.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm seeing this right now,
It's exhilarating.
Sure.
It is.
So last night I looked northeast of my house, and it was just this crazy buildup of just massive clouds. And I don't know the name of every type of cloud. Every cloud I do know, I know there's like a sub cloud of that cloud, right? But there, it looked like, I'm going to go on a limb here and say they were big old cumulonimbus clouds just building up over the east. And they were getting hit by the sun, and there were like no clouds over Denver. But I saw photos on Twitter today, and they were crazy.
Yeah, it was a beautiful storm. And in fact, that storm produced at least 4 land spouts that I know of. So, I mean, it definitely was a strong storm. It had some, I think, like 2-inch hail. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely, that storm was kind of supercellular in the beginning, and then it kind of merged into a line of storms. But it was gorgeous. I could even see the backside of that storm all the way down here in Monument as the sun was setting, and it was just glowing pink and orange. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of lightning too, like tons of lightning.
Tons of lightning. Yeah.
Do you ever get FOMO? Like, it's got to be hard to like
FOMO. Oh my god.
I don't get FOMO very often, unless I'm not shooting like a playoff baseball game or something like that. But then when I see like these crazy storm photos, I'm just like, oh my god.
I'm getting FOMO now, and this was like a year ago, right?
2 years ago. Yeah. 4 years ago.
4 years ago, yeah. So FOMO is a very real thing in the world of chasing, let me tell you, especially when you know that you're missing a gangbusters setup that's going to produce, very strong, powerful storms, and you can't be there. Like, you got to be an adult and work. That's that's really challenging sometimes. It just makes you appreciate those times that you can be out shooting that much more.
Right.
For sure.
My dad's given your mom and Glenn a run for their money, Mitch, and he's here with a solid comment. All right. So my dad wants to know, what's the most dangerous storm you've shot and how close did you get to it?
Oh gosh. I've had a lot of very close calls, very close intercepts of storms. I've had, weak tornadoes form right above me, right in front of me, in the field right next to me. I've driven through weak circulations. So there have been quite a few occurrences of that. Tescott, Kansas was a tornado event that happened on May 1st, and that was 2018. And that was a pretty exciting storm because we ended up being, becoming an EF3, so a pretty strong tornado, more higher end, but in its early stages, we were right up underneath it when it was developing and had circulation go right across the road. So, and then there have been other times where, there was one really close range intercept that I had where literally the tornado was forming on top of us, and power lines were starting to fall down on the car, and we're trying to get to our east road. We're going south like as fast as we can, and we're like, we just got to get to our east road. And in the meantime, we've got debris falling down onto the car, and we're like, go, 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 go.
Well, that sounds like a scene out of Twister. Yeah.
That's fine. Just power lines, they do that all the time.
It happens.
That's fine. This one's great too. This this cloud's got a fairly literal name, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes by many names. More commonly it's an Arcus cloud or a shelf cloud.
Shelf cloud, yeah.
Yep. So it's basically just indicating an outflow dominant storm. So it's not supercellular. It's kind of gusting out. You're gonna feel like kind of chilly outflow wind kind of rushing towards you as you see these storms. But I absolutely love shooting them because if you look underneath, they call that, you see the texture in the clouds there that's all lit up.
Mm-hmm.
They call that the whale's mouth. So when you're standing underneath one of these storms and it's coming towards you, it literally looks like a whale's mouth going over your head.
Yeah. Do these, I'd imagine you've seen more of these than I have since you're seeking them out, but I seem to see these quite often, but they're, are they always fast? Because every time I see one of these, it's like you blink and they're on top of you.
They do tend to be moving pretty quickly, yeah, because it's kind of part of a dynamic system that's moving off and gusting out, like I said. So that typically is a pretty rapid transition.
Yeah, I remember when I was very, very little, sprinting from one of these, I thought I was going to die. I was like running home from school and I was bawling my eyes out. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen because it was like blue sky. You never saw this thing coming, and all of a sudden over your head, this thing is like a Star Destroyer coming over you.
That is very ominous.
Yeah. I love it. They look like CGI,
They do.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, it almost didn't even look real when I was photographing it. I was in southeast Colorado. That was just south of Lamar, if you're familiar. So really pretty landscape out there. You couldn't have asked for a better, foreground. So
right.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you ever try to find a foreground?
Say that again.
I know sometimes it's probably really hard to find a foreground with these storms because you're kind of just taking pictures of the entire system. But do you ever shoot for a foreground?
If the foreground is there and I can, the thing is if I can find a spot that has, something like this, or I really love dilapidated old buildings or houses from way back in the day. like old churches, things like that. If I can find those out in the plains, then I'm like super ecstatic if I can, utilize that in my foreground. But when you're out in the plains, it's just not always there. So you kind of just have to work with what you've got.
Sure. Makes sense. Lightning strikes.
This looks very sci-fi. That looks like a planet that's striking.
Right? It's like very circular.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Independence Day. The movie.
Yeah,
that's true.
For sure.
Like this hover ship. Like,
so what's your method for capturing lightning? Do you just do, I know the way that I like to do it is to use obviously a tripod, but I'll just do basically a time lapse of multiple 4-second exposures.
let me tell you, when you have that kind of time and you can set up a time lapse, get all the settings right and get that going. I absolutely love setting up time lapses for lightning. I think that's a great approach. With this particular storm, it's actually really funny and kind of part of why I included it. There were CGs, which is cloud to ground lightning strikes, all around me. Mm-hmm. So this was in Illinois, and it was just the most electrical storm. I mean, boom, 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 just lightning strikes everywhere. So it was really not safe to be standing outside of your vehicle. So what I did was, you just kind of like, you got to improvise. So I just sat my camera on my dashboard and shot through my windshield. And seriously, it was just like every time I clicked the shutter, I was capturing a lightning bolt.
Wow.
That's how active it was.
You never want those moments to end, right? Like, please keep going.
I know. But generally, I try to get, as far as settings go, I try to do a really small aperture. As far as shutter speed, I tend to not go above like 10 seconds because then you're risking, because the storm's moving, then you're risking the, motion and blur in your shot. So I kind of tend to aim around 5 to 7 second exposures if I can, and then just ISO really low because you don't want to have, a big old bolt flash and then blow out your whole frame, right?
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, I remember the first time trying to get lightning was really not just to capture it in the first place, but the settings were really just, it's always very different depending on how close you are to the storm cell and everything, and how close, or if like this where the lightning's almost like right on top of you, and it's like you're always just on that edge of blowing it out and getting a proper exposure of the sky and everything. So
exactly, and if it's daylight, then you can't do long exposures because you're going to be blown out anyway, right? So it's really challenging to photograph.
Have you ever taken a look at any of those? I've seen them, but I've never tried them or talked to anybody that uses them. But they've got those lightning triggers. I just couldn't imagine those actually being fast enough.
Well, I'm a little bit, should I say snobby? I'm a little snobby about that because I feel like using a trigger is kind of cheating in a way because
I could see that. I kind of feel you on that.
It's literally doing all the work for you, right?
Yeah.
It
takes the challenge out.
Yeah, it senses the light and it releases the shutter, right? Well, I use a manual shutter release, so that way, I can push a button as soon as I see a flash and hope that I'm fast enough.
I see.
So therefore, I'm still controlling it, but I'm not actually pushing the shutter speed because when pushing the shutter, because when you do that, then you're risking, camera motion that way as well. So I figure if I have a manual shutter release, then I can just push it, and I probably miss a lot of shots by not using a lightning trigger, but I just like to not cheat.
Well, it's like, we had Glenn on. Hi, Glenn.
Yeah. Hi, Glenn. Glenn says he loves the color. Sorry, I mean to say it like he's from Australia. He puts U's and stuff.
I love it. Yeah.
He had mentioned that photography is like fishing. I really like that analogy. And that's kind of like having an automatic fish lure, right? If you have the lightning trigger, like you cast your line and it just grabs a fish. That would take all the fun out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the work? You got to work for it, man.
That's how I feel about self-driving cars. But
here's the thing, Mitch. I have a lightning trigger in my locker at the camera shop that I've never used because one came in and I was like, I'm really interested in using this, but now I'm going to put it back on the shelf.
Good.
For anyone watching, $45 if you would like a lightning trigger. It's older.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark Stein says striking. Hello, Mark.
Striking. Boom. Striking. Mark has also been on the show. He shoots film.
Love it.
My mom has
and
a question,
digital.
and so
your mom wants to know how far in advance do you have info or timing to head out? Do you use like any specific apps or anything?
So my forecasting process is pretty in depth. It might be, I would say that I'm looking at stuff generally every single day. I forecast every single day. So I'm always looking at the weather patterns, looking at what is potentially coming down the road. So I guess the short answer to that is it can be as long as a week or more where I'm watching a certain weather pattern, or it could be, hey, it's the day of, and I'm looking at my radar app. I use Radar Scope, and I'm seeing a storm popping up right in my backyard. I guess I'll go shoot it. So it just really depends. But especially this time of year, spring and early summer here in Colorado gets really active, and so I'm looking at the forecast every day, and I'm looking for storms. So it's pretty much a daily process for me.
It was kind of active down there today, wasn't it? Like kind of southeast Colorado.
Yeah, I think down near Holyoke and just far southeast Colorado, storms tracked into Kansas there, and I think I saw reports of several different landspouts. And I haven't looked in the last hour, but the storm was, from my friends that were posting photos, it was a really beautiful storm. So yeah. It's been active today. It's been active the last few days. So we'll see what happens.
It's pretty cool. Storm Chaser Twitter is lit. There's just like a bunch of storm chasers on Twitter, and I've just been going down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's the whole hashtag weather Twitter, WX Twitter. So anytime you want to see weather, you can pretty much search that hashtag there.
I like Glenn's comment here. Even if he's joking, it's almost a good point, right? Like, if
you took the world's best lightning shot with a trigger, could the trigger company claim copyright?
Heck no, because I still shot the photo.
Oh, that's true. I mean, it's your camera, I guess. I mean, does it say? Does it say like shot with so and so lightning trigger?
I think it just adds to your reasoning for not using one. Is it's like it's not really you, right?
It's not. No, you're right. I mean, now that I think about it, yeah, that's a solid point, because I did not physically press the shutter. So
that's the thing with.
Glenn wants to know: did you though? Who pressed the trigger? I mean, we could go. That's a real deep question, Glenn. You don't even
go down a rabbit hole. I don't care.
Yeah, who pushed that trigger? When was your first tornado? Do you remember the date?
Yep, May 9th, 2015.
May 9th, 2015. How big was it?
It was a little guy, actually. The first one was in near Eads, Colorado, which is again southeast Colorado. Beautiful white tornado. It was just spectacular, and we saw 3 more tornadoes that day. So it was a pretty solid first tornado day for me.
Sorry, I was being.
Hold on. Are you getting burnt by the sun?
Yeah.
It seems every time you have sun on you, I look where I am, and it's just completely cloudy. There's not sun. There's no sun at all.
It's very cloudy right now, but
like
the heavens parted, and they chose me. So
I can go storm chasing outside. Ted says that's a great tornado shot. Thanks. Ted.
This is a fantastic photo. I really, really like this. This is exactly if I went storm chasing, I'd love to see one of these thinner, spindly ones for sure. And I just love that that's like perfectly dead center. I rarely see tornado shots where it's dead center like this, and you've got such great symmetry. There's like 0 distractions in that shot, so I really like it.
That's what I love about it. Honestly, it's the simplicity of just this scene. There's nothing dramatic here. There's no real extreme contrast or really anything crazy going on, except just this beautiful slender tornado. That was in McLean, Texas, and it was just absolutely beautiful. So I mean, we were able to just sit there and film it for good solid 15 minutes or so until before we got slammed with baseball-sized hail and we had to jump east and get out ahead of it again. But then directly after this, a much bigger, stronger tornado formed that was not at all photogenic. And I still got photos of it, but it was just this monster rain-wrapped tornado. And even though those are exciting to chase from a chaser's perspective, from a photographer's perspective, it does really nothing for me. You know, this right here, this is what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. I like that one.
Yeah, I love it. Glenn says the post in the bottom right does his OCD in, though. Glenn is,
I mean,
oh my gosh, Glenn.
I don't
I'm going to
know.
stop putting your comments on the
It's a real thing, though. I mean, there's that fence there, and you know, a lot of times I will edit out, like, you know, power lines, things like that. I will definitely edit those out, and you know, that's probably something I could do there. But that was a photo that I think I edited in just like 10 minutes and threw it up on social media. And I liked it so much that I just kind of kept it as is.
Yeah, he was just giving you a hard time. He didn't really.
That's okay. Hey, I can take it.
Let's see. I love, so that's my favorite, like, storm photos have this like icy blue like highlights in them.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, you will be much more likely to see storms like that in the northern plains. And that's why I love chasing the northern plains so much. So, you know, talking states like Montana, in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, that's where you start to see these beautiful, just aquamarine, these beautiful colors. And it's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, that's I guess I was wrong about that one. I would have assumed that was from lightning behind the clouds that lit that.
No, it had pretty strong hail core going on, and just the way that the light is kind of reflecting through, I don't know if reflecting is the right word, the way the light is penetrating through the cloud there and the hail and all of that, it just kind of gives us this beautiful hue.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't see it all the time, but when you do, it's absolutely gorgeous.
That one would be a good acrylic print.
I agree. I would love to get that on acrylic or metal.
Yeah, for sure. Because it glows already. It would glow really well on those. That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome color.
Do you take bad pictures, or do you only have like good?
Oh, I take many.
Look at this thing.
That is very cool. That almost looks like that looks like a top hat.
Yeah, or an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is massive storm. That was near Hollis, Oklahoma. Absolutely gorgeous storm. I mean, there were no tornadoes with it that I'm aware of, but it was just sculpted like basically like a wedding cake. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So it was
or a wedding dress.
Yeah, I love the texture of it. I love how it's just layers up, you know.
That is
right?
Yeah, I could stare at that one for a while. That's
pretty and then on the right side of it there where it's kind of got those streaks, that's hail falling.
Oh wow.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, this type of image is the one, if I'm scrolling through Instagram, it's like no questions asked, double tap like there's you know.
Yay.
Do you like what was I gonna say? That's the type of storm that I would be down to. But yes, you never really know if there's going to be a tornado.
That's the whole point, right? You go out hoping to see this every time, and then you do, and it's like, oh my god.
Well, I mean, there's a certain level of, I mean, you can look at the soundings, you know, you can forecast and look at what does the wind profile look like, and you can, like, this day is a perfect textbook example of beautiful spiraling wind profiles. And when you look at a sounding like that, you know, the soundings are, you know, the weather balloons that they launch up into the air that kind of reads the atmosphere as they go up into the air. And so it tells you, okay, what are the winds doing as you go up each layer in the atmosphere? And so that can give you a lot of information. So I can look at a sounding and say, okay, well, I like how the winds are turning, you know, veering up here and all this stuff. And you can say, I think we're going to have a good supercell structure day. You know, all other things considered, if, you know, there's a lot of other parameters that you have to take into account, but that's just one. There's little hints along the way that you can look for. So
I might be stupid, but are you moving in this picture?
I am actually shooting out the passenger window of a car. Yes.
Yeah, I just barely saw the ground moving, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I actually like that a lot, though, because it just gives a different effect to the ground.
Gives this motion, you know, this sense of dynamics, the movement of the storm, but also we were just trying to haul out of the way of this hail that we couldn't manage to stay out of. We were trying to reposition south and east so that we could find a better east road. And then we actually, right after I shot this photo, we blew out a tire. So
yeah, well, that's pretty good though. That, I mean, I know it's a wide angle, but that's pretty good though that you were able to get a sharp shot with not the fastest shutter speed, because if the ground is still pretty, still got some motion in it, then the cloud looks pretty darn good. Do you have is it just kind of like whatever is comfortable at the time when you're shooting out the window, or do you have like some sort of like go-to way to hold the camera when you're shooting out the window?
I almost never use a tripod. I find they're too limiting in an environment that's constantly changing. So even if I'm not in the car, if I'm just outside of my car, standing for a minute, taking pictures of the storm, I don't always have time to just set up a tripod real quick. I'm hand holding the vast majority of my shots. So it's really just kind of in the moment, like what's going to work in this moment. And I think really quickly, because you have to move quickly, because a lot of the times storms are moving fast. So you have to not only be thinking of your next steps, where am I going to navigate to next so that I can, stay in a good position on the storm and, be in a good position, but also capturing it along the way. So there's not always a whole lot of time, especially if storms are moving fast. So yeah, so this is one of those situations where I was just firing a few shots out my window.
Go ahead.
I would imagine quite a bit of your favorite images are probably actually while shooting out the window, right?
There's been a few times where I'm actually driving, and I wouldn't recommend this. Don't try this at home or anything. But I'm driving and I'm actually resting my camera on my left arm, and I'm firing a few clicks of the shutter out the window while I'm driving. I'm still looking at the road. I'm not being reckless or anything, but you
got to do what you got to do, though, right?
I'm shooting out the window. I'm like, hey, you got to do it.
It's all.
We call that that's like an epic version of spray and pray.
Yeah. It works. It works sometimes. So.
Yeah. So is this a whale's mouth? Is that what you would call whale's mouth?
This is definitely super cellular. It's just starting to kind of get sculpted and rotate. It does have that textured whale's mouth look underneath, but but it's not. The differentiating factor is that it's more super cellular. So it's rotating. It's not outflow dominant, meaning it's not gusting out at you, it's spinning. So it's just a little bit different dynamics in play, but you still, obviously, as you see, have some beautiful texture underneath this cloud. And I love how the light is just like hitting all those different pieces of the cloud, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah,
right. And you got that blue up above too.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Do you use polarizers, or is it only when it calls for it, right?
I don't use any filters because with the Rokinon, the way the glass is shaped.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
That's
can't really, unfortunately not. I mean, I feel like you can do a lot of that correction in Lightroom. That's what I, edit in. So you can fix a lot of, like, for example, the distortion, the highlights, some of those things you can kind of account for with your editing. And so that's just what I do.
Yeah, it is a bummer about that lens. That's it's still
a bummer about all those wide angle lenses. Actually, can we go on this little gear tangent real quick, and maybe I'll post it. We can talk about this another time too, Mitch. But there is like a Kickstarter, and it's magnetic, like little gradient or like magnetic polarizers and ND filters that you can put on the back of your lens, like the Rokinon. And so it just sits there. And so like $75 gets you a filter on the back that stops light from coming through, which is kind of cool.
I've definitely seen those. I just think it would be fantastic if we had Canon or Sigma or somebody definitely Sigma, because they have all these bulbous front element lenses now with the art series. Right. And I just think, especially those lenses, since they're so big, totally have room to put a drop-in filter in there, and they could sell their own. I'll buy it as long as it gives us the ability to use a polarizer on the back.
Exactly. Like with the Nikon 14-24, they did finally make, a filter thing that you could put on there to put filters on it. But, it took years for them to even do that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like $300 or something.
Yeah. It's a pretty penny.
I'd pay it though. I'd do it because that's my biggest issue. I know I really want the Sigma 14 to 24 for E-mount, and can't put a filter on the front, and that's like the biggest roadblock for me because I love circular polarizers. So like I want that lens, but it's like without the thing I would love to use also. So
I do wish they would kind of figure out a way to make that a possibility with those bigger lenses.
Canon's got those that one adapter with the polarizer in it.
Oh my gosh. Ted says I think they have 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter square adapter for some of the really big filters. That's true. They exist. You can put them on there, but 150 by 150 is like the window in my apartment. So.
I think I'll pass on that.
You're getting out of the car with that thing, and like, oh, this is the storm, and you.
That's not awkward at all.
Do you have a favorite type of cloud?
Favorite type? Anything that looks pretty when I shoot it.
Sure.
No, but I mean, I love the very first photo that you brought up, just that classic sculpted supercell, where you can really just see all the different layers going up through the storm, and then you see this rockin' inflow jet just feeding in moisture into the storm, so you can see everything, every layer of the process happening with your wide angle. So I mean, I'm a sucker for classic supercells.
Sure. We have two more questions. This is a pretty cool tornado.
It is very. That one looks like it's on the attack.
Yeah, it's angry.
It's got a pretty good dust swirl at the bottom, doesn't it?
Yeah. Mitch's mom, she's coming in clutch again. If you didn't know this, Jessica, Mitch's mom is the #1 fan of the show.
Number one.
Glenn from Australia is the #2 fan of the show. And whenever my parents comment, they're also the #1 fans of the show because they're my parents.
Of course.
But Pam wants to know, has anyone ever asked you to take the storm?
Other friends, when I'm out shooting, if I have other friends in the car, they'll be like, hey, take a picture of me in front of the storm, So usually, other storm chasers, they love that kind of stuff, and they'll just do some crazy pose like, woo, but as far as like actual clients hiring me to take photos of them in front of the storms, like no one's ever asked me to do that, and I really wish someone would.
There's some chasers out there who like sell chasing experiences in their cars, and so you must have to sign a death waiver.
So
I would make someone
and a disappointment waiver. What if nothing shows up?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I've done a few private tours. People have hired me to take them out chasing, for like a week at a time in May or early June, and it's a lot of fun. Especially with people that have never chased storms or never seen a tornado before. It's really exciting to be able to take people out and just show them. If I'm lucky, I'm showing them their first tornado or just some really awesome storm structure or something like that. Just giving them this whole new experience that they've probably never had before.
Right.
Well, like these two people need to know storm chasing. So
there's 4 seats in that Outback.
Well, I know that's actually, to be honest, I mean, that storm lighting is generally fairly solid portrait lighting. Every time I'm in that kind of situation, I'm like, it would be nice to have a picture in here.
Right? Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Ted is asking, is there a good place to learn the basics of these cloud types and how they form? I had a coworker that liked chasing storms, but when he started talking about it, it all went over my head.
Where to start? Well, there's a lot of good places, a lot of good references, where to even begin. The Storm Prediction Center has a ton of resources online, so spc.com. There's going to be a whole list, a menu on the left side where you can look at all their different like publications. You can look at training. You can also go, if you've heard of Skywarn, that's actually a training program hosted through the National Weather Service all across the nation. So they do a lot of basic training. They even do advanced training, and you can actually become a certified storm spotter that, you can actually call in weather reports and help with the warning process with the National Weather Service. You don't have to go that route, but that's just one way to learn. And then there's a bunch of websites that you can definitely check out. And there's a ton of textbooks out there. If you just Google meteorology, textbooks, things like that, a lot of those will have the basics that you need to know just to understand the fundamentals of just what are the basics, like what's the jet stream, what's, how does moisture work, and how does it feed into the storms and all this stuff. All the dynamics really is what you're trying to learn. So there's a lot of different resources out there.
They did a free Skywarn class online right when the stay-at-home orders started, right?
Yeah.
I saw on Twitter, and I think 600 people were in the live broadcast of it.
Yep.
I think you can, and they recorded that video. So if you type in Skywarn, you can go watch it. I watched 20 minutes of it, and then I had to go do something else. I need to finish it, but it looks pretty cool. So
yeah, it is. They have a lot of good information, and then again, they also have an advanced training. So the more you get in there, the more you can learn. And then there's also the MedEd website. It's meted.com. That's another really good resource. You can basically go to that website, type in anything you want, and it'll probably have classes on it.
Sure. Do tornadoes sound like trains?
My experience has been more like a waterfall, but I also haven't had close range, I guess a close range intercept with a really violent tornado. I've been close to some weak tornadoes, and to me it sounds more like a waterfall.
Why is that for some reason really terrifying?
I don't know.
That the combination of the two, the sound of a waterfall is really tranquil, but combined with the sight of this picture, which is really sinister looking, now makes it terrifying.
Right.
Yeah, and the more violent tornadoes, people say they sound like trains. It's something otherworldly that you can't really describe. But with this photo, it was as you can see, it's a smaller tornado. It's not terribly strong, but it has just this ominous feel. It almost looks like the Wizard of Oz tornado.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen that movie, it's that scene where Auntie Em and all of them are trying to get to their cellar, and there's a tornado in the background. So that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, that one's creepy looking. That one looks like it's trying to sneak up on someone.
Yeah,
right.
Means business. Yeah, and so this is the opposite of that. This is a very strong tornado, very powerful. It was an EF3, so it's not like the strongest there is, but it's a pretty strong tornado. Destroyed, I think, a barn and a few other things, but luckily no injuries. I don't think no fatalities came out of this storm, so that's always a really good thing to hear. But what I love about this shot is I'm on the south. I'm looking northeast, so I'm southwest of it. And typically, especially with a storm like that, you would expect it to be rain wrapped, so you wouldn't typically be able to see it from this location. But here we are with this beautiful view of this sculpted mesocyclone and this beautiful strong tornado.
That's crazy. Every one of them, I'm just like, whoa! Look at this one.
That's awesome.
Do you sell your photos?
I sure do. Yeah.
Okay. How's the storm photo business? If I had all the money in the world, I would buy every storm photo I ever see because they're just epic looking.
Yeah. Well, and I feel the same way. I actually have a stock agency that I shoot for that is based out of London. Cool. So they sell my photos pretty much worldwide. That's really, as far as photography goes, that's pretty much the main way that I make money with these photos, because generally, other than a few sales, like random fans here and there that want a photo, occasionally I'll sell photos, but it's not really like a high demand market, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This looks like another one of those ones that was sculpted by the wind, per se. Did you sit here for a long time for this one too?
This one was moving faster, so we didn't get a whole lot of time to just sit around, but we did, we had several stops where we were able to just get out. Hey, let's maybe 10 minutes. Let's just spend 10 minutes here and then reposition, because the whole thing was, as it kept getting closer to us, the structure kept getting better, so we wanted to make sure we stayed out ahead of it so that we had a perfect unobstructed view of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Are you just going like up and back, or up and down and then back and down? And is that kind of your route, or how do you navigate these country roads?
Well, wing and a prayer and hope that the road network's good.
Right.
And actually, in this situation, the roads were pretty great for the most part until, we're tracking mostly east because storms typically move east or northeast, east northeast. And so if you find a good east road and has some good north and east options, then you can kind of just keep going, like you said, stair stepping and keeping along with it. But then, especially in the plains, you just end up in these situations where that road runs out and you can either go only north or south. There's no other options. And so this is kind of a situation where the road network kind of screwed me out of good positioning. So I had to kind of just take what I could get and then, drop south as quick as I could.
Storm chasers need a pass to go off-road.
Oh, believe me, chasers go off-road whether people want to or not. They do. And yeah,
that one certainly shows scale for sure. That's amazing.
This one looks like you're inside of it.
Basically am. So that's that same storm that we were just looking at, but that road, that north-south road I was telling you about, where I couldn't go any further east. And so I just was like, okay, I'm going to just sit here and let this storm come right at me. And so sitting right here, the wind was just howling into this storm in a way that sounded so haunting. It was like, even the sound of the wind, it was haunting. It was so crazy. But it was pretty exciting to just sit there and then let it overtake me.
That's awesome. Another crazy tornado. That one looks massive compared to these little houses.
That one looks like it would throw things. What's the largest thing you've seen go flying?
I've seen tornadoes take whole trees out of the ground. I've seen them, obviously uproot buildings. Luckily, because of my style of chasing, with a violent tornado, I'm not going to be one of those chasers that's going to be right up on it, because for a lot of reasons, I have a little girl to come home to. I don't want to be putting myself in too crazy of a situation, but I have gotten close to, like, the biggest tornado that I've been close to was 1.5 miles wide. It was down in Louisiana, and we literally were maybe 250 yards from this tornado as it was crossing the highway in front of us, and that was pretty intense.
Gosh.
Yeah.
250 yards seems like nothing compared to a mile-long tornado.
Yeah,
it's like
definitely had the adrenaline going, and that was one of those times where I was actually filming out the window, but I was so pumped on adrenaline that I accidentally double tapped my record button. So I didn't record any of it.
Well, that's just typical.
I know, right? It's okay.
Another pancake. Would you call this a supercell then?
Yeah, so that's that classic supercell structure that I was talking to you about. It's got that the pancake look. They call them striations, these little layers, and it's just indicative of strong winds changing directions with height.
Sweet. How much do you play with color balance on your images?
I try to get as much of an earthy tone as I possibly can. And, my goal is to just make it look as natural as possible, but just bring enough of the contrast and the detail.
Sure.
I always take the highlights down because, as you can tell on a storm like this, the highlights would have blown it out, at least on the left side there. But, it really just depends on the scene. Some scenes don't require a whole lot of editing, and then some scenes you kind of have to work on a lot more. So again, it just depends on the existing light, the ambient light in that particular scene.
For sure. And that's where it ends. We've reached the finish.
Sweet.
of the photos.
Sweet.
So Mitch, do you have any other questions?
So
no cows then? No, you haven't seen any cows go through there?
Cows go. No
I
cows
haven't seen any
been
cows flying yet. No, it does happen. It definitely happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely exciting.
I'd be like, I flying from I've reached my peak
Yeah.
for chasing. Yeah, I would be out.
You'd be out?
So
That'd be it for you?
I would be out. That would be it for me. I would retire from storm chasing if a cow went flying by me like that. All right, seen everything I need to see.
You're like, we're done here.
Yeah.
Well, you've got some really cool images. It's in, it's amazing getting out there. I know that's very hard to find the storm, which has no consideration of where you are or where it is, or it doesn't care. And getting into position to get a good picture of it is all very difficult. So a lot of that takes tons of skill. Me and Kyle were super excited to have you on too. So I think we had a great time looking at these.
So I found your website, Jessica. I found your website. Can I put it in the comments below? Is that cool with you?
I would love that. Yes, please.
Sweet. So check out.
Go ahead.
Oh, so check out Jessica's work in the comments below. And then what were you saying, Jessica?
Oh, I was just going to say, you touched on another big thing is when it comes to shooting storms too, it's really about positioning for the best light in the scene, because, ideally you want to be east or southeast of the storm and maybe even south, but you don't want to necessarily be north of it. So that's another thing, just the longer you chase, the more experience you have out there, the more you kind of learn these things. So it's a lot of fun to get out there and experiment, as long as you do so safely. Like if you don't have any knowledge of how to chase storms, it's a good idea to kind of, read up on material before you go out there, and really just kind of keep your distance at first. And then as you learn more and become more comfortable, then you can get a little closer, things like that. So just always play it safe if you're going to go out there and check out storms.
Cool. That's good advice. Sorry,
as safe as you can.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So awesome, Jessica. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and spending this last minute. It was an hour. An hour flew by.
Yeah.
Hopefully you ate dinner already. If not, we're all be eating late dinners.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I always love to talk about storms, so thank you.
Of course. This has been Camera Shop Talk for the 21st of May, 2020. Will we be back tomorrow, Mitch?
Sure.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We got to talk about how the Canon EOS R5 might actually be $6,500.
Oh, we do need to talk about that one.
We need to talk about it, but we don't need to make Jessica sit through that. So we'll do it tomorrow. Sweet. We'll see everyone later. Make sure you give Jessica's work a look in the comments below. Thanks, everyone. Ending the broadcast. I should